Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. Today's guest has a unique perspective on leadership failures, one he gained way earlier than most. Michael Delisser is a leadership strategist and the author of Leadership Accelerators. For over 25 years, he designed programs and coached executives on communication and emotional intelligence. But his passion started when he was just 15, sitting in on his father's coaching session with Fortune 100 executives, leaders who were getting fired simply because they couldn't communicate effectively. So that experience showed him how often organizations unintentionally set leaders up to fail, focusing on technical skills over crucial communication abilities. Michael now dedicates his work to helping leaders unlearn those bad habits and build the skills needed to truly connect and succeed. So, Michael, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so let's dive in. Michael, your origin story is fascinating. Seeing top executives fail due to poor communication when you were just 15. So, can you take us back to that room? So, what did watching those accomplished leaders struggle with something so fundamental teach you about the nature of failure in leadership?
Yeah, I'd love to. It was a fascinating experience. When you're 15 years old and your parent offers to take you to work, you don't know what to expect, But when I got into there, he had prearranged for me to watch him coach a number of different Fortune 100 executives that have been fired, as you mentioned, for poor communication skill. And I guess for me, my father, he worked in executive outplacement firms. Almost all of his clients had failed, and majority of them had failed because of their lack of communication skills. And the first time that I saw this, I was watching my father coaching this, I think he was a senior vice president with a very well-known financial organization. And he had been fired because of lack of communication skills. And he managed their finance division, their entire finance of this multinational organization. And so he was coaching him on things like how not to interrupt others and how to be a better listener and things like that. And I remember watching him and being fascinated that someone could get that high in an organization and struggle with these basic communication skills. And so when that first meeting was over, my father asked me, what did I think of it? And I said, well, I was kind of shocked, that you were working on those basic things with him. And he said, unfortunately, I see this a lot. And what happens is companies promote their people based on their technical skills, and they keep promoting them to a point where most of their job, the higher you get in an organization, the more your job becomes critical to have strong communication skills. And the further you get away from the technical skills that got you noticed. And so he said, I see this over and over. It's referred to as the Peter principle, and you may be familiar with that, but in case your audience is not, it's the idea that we get promoted to our highest level of incompetence, not competence, but incompetence. And the reason for that is we get promoted because we're technically great at something, but eventually we get to the point of a role where our job is all communication skills and very little technical because we have a team that does the technical work under us. And when you get to that point, you've gotten to the point where you have not spent enough time developing your leadership communication skills, and that's what causes these executives to fail. And so that was kind of the story behind it. But the companies have failed them as well because they should have given them leadership communication skill training along the way, and a lot of companies do not do that, and it ends up with bad outcomes for the executives. So.
All right. Thank you for sharing that story. So, Michael, how did that experience shape your understanding of why organizations often unintentionally set leaders up to fail?
I think every organization has good intentions and none of them want to see the leaders fail. But Unfortunately, when companies go through struggles, the first thing they usually eliminate is leadership training or any kind of training, right? Because they
Mm,
see it as an extra. And as a result of that, and some companies just never develop that in the first place. And so if they're not aware of the potential consequences of not making sure your people have received the right training on the communication skills needed to succeed at higher levels, then that's what happens. But sometimes it's because companies never budgeted for it or didn't see the value of it. Sometimes it's because they had financial struggles and they had to cut back. There's a lot of things that contribute to companies not preparing their leaders for success as they promote them. And then of course, in today's world, with AI taking over technical skills much faster than any communication skills, the problem becomes even worse because now their need for technical skills is disappearing faster than it was, and their need for communication skills is increasing faster than it was. So companies that are not investing in helping their leaders be good communicators will run into even more trouble in the future.
all right. That's truly insightful. So, Michael, you talk about unlearning old habits. So, what's the single most common destructive communication habits you see successful leaders needing to unlearn?
Well, it's interesting. There's a number of them, and I have in the book that I wrote, I actually have assessments in there that include a list of all of them. But some of the more common ones are um, not being able to manage their emotions. Like they get into an argument of some kind or some disagreement, and they say things they shouldn't say because their emotions got out of control. That's one thing.
Mm,
But the more common communication skills, in particular, are constantly interrupting others, finishing people's sentences, giving off nonverbal signs that make you, it's almost like looks of disapproval, or, a lot of times people are not aware that they're indicating that they're really either not interested or disagreeing or judging the other person. So those are the kind of things that people do inadvertently. And, a lot of that comes, whenever I end up coaching someone on any of those things and I ask them where did that habit start? More often than not, it started early in life, where it was a family communication dynamic where, and the one example I like to share is one executive who said, "Yeah, I was one of six kids, and we would constantly interrupt each other just to get attention at the dinner table, because
mm,
they all wanted to be able to get attention, but unfortunately, that doesn't work in the workplace. So,
yeah.
so when you have those kind of habits, I have found that executives, when they unlearn the things that are really hurting their trust in their relationships, sometimes that has a greater impact than me teaching them some new skill, right? And so there's this whole process I take them through where they reduce they increase their self-awareness of what habits they're doing and the impact it's having on others. Then they, need to figure out how to replace that habit with something more effective. And that's what I do in my coaching with them is I really help them become more aware, and then I help them learn how to replace those habits.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks for sharing. That was really insightful. So, Michael, you talked about your book for a moment. So, tell us,
Mhm.
you're an author. So, tell us a bit about your book and why you wrote it, the motivation behind you writing the book, and also who is the book for, who should read the book, and what should be the expected value someone who wants to read the book will get from it.
Yeah, and so the initial motivation for the book was you could go all the way back to first watching my father coaching those executives who were struggling with communication skills. And then over the past 25 years, I've been teaching and helping people deal with the same issues. And I see the problem getting worse instead of better. So when I wrote the book, and the book is called Leadership Accelerators, High Impact Communication Skills that strengthens relationships and drive results. And the book itself focuses on the three things that I see leaders getting into trouble the most with, and that is not really having enough awareness of their emotional intelligence, in an inability to recognize or overcome their communication habits. Some of the ones we talked about earlier,
Mm,
ineffective communication habits. I call them culturally learned communication habits because family culture, things like that, they all contribute to why we have these habits. And the third area is sort of say emotional intelligence, the habits, And the third area I'm actually drawing a blank on here. Oh, navigating personality. Sorry, that one's a really important one. So
Yeah.
essentially, it's the ability to know how your own personality impacts your effectiveness in developing relationships and trust, and even in your roles. And then can you learn to read and understand the differences of other personalities? But those are the three things that when people get really high self-awareness on, they become very effective in their roles. And when I see really effective leaders, they almost always are good in those three things. They have high emotional intelligence. They're very aware of the communication habits, and they've done work to eliminate their ineffective ones. And they're also aware of how their personality impacts their communication. And the way the book is laid out is in every chapter, there's an assessment on whatever area the chapter is covering. And then
Mm.
there are activities you can do to practice becoming better at them. And then there's other tips and tools to help you replace that ineffective habit with a more effective behavior. And so if you were to, and you asked about the audience, it's called Leadership Accelerators, but what's in this book is relevant to every relationship. I've had executives and people buy this book and go through it and say, this actually helped me more at home with my spouse or my kids than even it did in work, because they applied it in both places. But the same is true if you can become highly self-aware of your communication in those three areas and really get good at those three areas. Then it impacts your personal relationships and your work relationships. And it's really valuable for anyone, even though the target audience was leaders.
All right. So going back to the topic of unlearning old habits. So how does that struggle to unlearn connects to the idea that leaders often get promoted for technical skills but lack communication training?
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't find this out until late in their careers because nobody's given them the feedback along the way, right? And so, or they've had limited feedback or even knowledge of how to get rid of these bad behaviors or what they need to unlearn. But essentially, what I always tell people is you always want to focus on the one or two things that are having the single biggest impact on your effectiveness in your role or your relationships, right? And so when you've been promoted on your technical skills and you keep getting promoted, but if you haven't spent time working on those communication skills, you don't even know what to unlearn, right? And it's not until you have a bad outcome like getting fired and sent to coaching or something like that that you first learn these things.
Mm.
So if you can learn these things earlier in your career, or regardless of where you are in your career, if you could go out and figure out for yourself, what's the one or two things that I could focus on that would have the biggest positive impact on my relationships and my results, then this book is clearly written for that purpose, to help people discover that and be able to do something about it. But I'm telling you, in a world where AI is rapidly replacing our technical skills, it's becoming even more critical that people take the time to figure out what are the habits they have that are useful and use them more, and what are the habits they have that might be holding them back in their success, and finding ways to reduce using them. And that's what I do in my coaching all the time, helping
Great.
them reduce those ineffective habits.
All right, Michael. So you mentioned AI taking or making communications even more critical. So how does this raise the stakes for leaders who haven't mastered these skills?
Well, I mean, let's think about what AI can do for you, right? A lot of people are starting to use AI. Maybe you use it to write an email, for example, right? And you say, oh, I want to write this email to this person. It can help you write that email, but it can't help you make a person feel like you value them. You know what I mean? It's like, it's your interactions with them. It's you giving them your full attention. It's how you respond to them personally. And so you have to develop those skills. And in a world where people will not stay in a job if they don't feel like they are being appreciated, or they are not getting the development opportunities they know, that they want. If you as a leader haven't developed the communication skills to help your team feel valued and help their team feel like you're committed to their development, you're going to have a harder time holding on to people. And with AI, replacing technical skills, it's going to make it even that much more critical that you can hold on to the people with the technical skills, and it's your communication skills are going to be able to help you do that. And so if you're constantly, if you're constantly saying things in a tone and a lot of times, like someone who's very results driven will move up in an organization quickly, but that same results driven quality that got them there causes them to be overly blunt or insensitive to others sometimes. And that's the same thing that causes them to lose their direct reports or lose people because they don't want to work with them anymore or get themselves fired. Right. And so it's pretty critical that everybody, as we move forward, is working harder and harder on becoming stronger communication skills. Because, I mean, imagine whatever role you're in right now, whoever's listening, if tomorrow half of your technical part of your job was replaced by AI, what are you left with? What are the skills that you can offer that are going to make you stand out from the other people? And I would suggest that the people that have the strongest communication skills are the ones that are going to be more valuable to the organization moving forward. And so it's pretty important. Your family, your friends, people at work. But step one in really knowing where you should focus is always self-awareness. And if you are not self-aware, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to focus on the few things that'll have the biggest impact, right? And so for me, I always promote the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule is essentially that 20% of what you do will typically get you 80% of your results. And so if that's the case, then you want to focus on just those few habits or few things that if you improved in would enable you to become more effective in your role or in your relationships. So step one is always developing self-awareness in those key areas. And it's also about making sure that once you have self-awareness, you know which few things are the ones that will have the biggest impact, and then having a plan to be able to implement that would help you immediately improve in those few areas. And if you do that, you will have a much better outcome.
All right, Michael. So after decades dedicated to fixing this core leadership challenge, so what does being successful truly mean to you today?
Being successful, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Yeah. So for me, for anyone to be successful, you have to be able to develop strong relationships with others, right? And so, particularly if you're planning on moving up in an organization, because your ability to develop strong relationships will ultimately potentially either open doors for you or create opportunities or help you retain employees or get your ideas better heard by others. So ultimately, that ability to really have high self-awareness and become effective in a number of different areas, but in particular, one-on-one interpersonal skills, because more often than not, when we're in one-on-ones or even when we're in meetings, we have to make sure that we are coming across in a way that makes people want to follow or want to buy into your ideas. And so your ability to connect with others is going to be key, particularly as more and more technological advances happen and AI continues to advance. Your ability to connect with others will be critical to success. So for me, that's really important. And even more important than that is having high self-awareness, because it's hard to improve in any area if you don't know what it is you need to work on. So those are the two things.
great. So this has been incredibly insightful. So for listeners who want to dive deeper into your leadership accelerators, or perhaps connect with your work. So, where is the best place for them to go?
Well, I regularly post articles on both communication skills and leadership skills on LinkedIn. So if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn, they can do that just by looking me up on my name. But my website is another place, which would also give a direct link out to the book as well. But my website, the shorter version of it is my first name at my last name. So it's Michael, Michael at Delisser, DELISSER.com. So Michael at Delisser.com. If you go there, I have some resources there. I also have a link to a YouTube page that I have that is nothing but short videos from different podcasts and things that just take on single areas of communication that they could go look at. And so if you go to my website, you'll find my YouTube link, you'll find the link to the book, and then you'll learn more about me. And then I always recommend people try to follow me on LinkedIn, because that's where I post the most, and that's where I put a lot of free resources to help people improve their communication. My passion in life is helping people avoid the failures that I saw throughout my career, and I watched my father when I was 15. The same thing keeps happening to people, and I've seen this happen for almost 30 years now, where they just keep failing because they didn't spend enough time refining and working on their communication skills. So that's my passion, is to help people do that. And if you reach out to me on my website or on LinkedIn, I can probably give you some resources that'll help you as well.
Awesome. So, yeah, it's been a really insightful conversation with you here today, Michael. And I'm really excited and honored to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed being here. And again, anything I could do to help your listeners find ways to improve their ability to be successful in their relationship and the results, that's what I'm here to do. I love doing that. So thanks for the opportunity.